Welcome to the LifePro podcast, where today I have the pleasure of having Michael Gumley, who is the owner of Melbourne Guitar Academy, author of the Guitar Ninja curriculum, and founder of Six Figure Guitar Teacher. Welcome to the show, Michael. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Omid. Thanks so much for having me.
Great. Today's topic is the power of music. And, I think music is something that everybody loves and everybody can relate to and is a big part of everybody's magical moments and big moments in life. Before we get into the topic, why don't you start out and tell us more about yourself and about your journey?
Yeah, well, I really didn't like music all that much. Sorry, let me back up a step there. I really didn't like learning the musical instruments that much when I was younger. I probably, came from a regular family. I'm a regular kind of person, and I had my parents buy a piano, like a computer keyboard program, maybe when I was 7 or 8. It was actually my grandparents bought me a keyboard, computer CD-ROM teach yourself keyboard. And I think we were all excited about it. We set it up and I used it like once or twice and then never touched it again. Uh, and that for a couple of years. And then my auntie had a piano at her house, and I used to go to their house a couple of weeks. And for 5 minutes here and there, I would just go up to the piano and I would try and figure out little melodies. And I'm a big fan of a video game called The Legend of Zelda, particularly the Ocarina of Time one, which came out probably roughly when I was 8 years old. And we love that game. Me, my brothers, and my friends are always playing it. And a big part of that game is actual music. You have like this little potato flute thing called an ocarina, and you learn songs, and each of these songs either teleports you or unlocks something in the game. So I would sit there trying to figure them out on the piano, and I did that to varying success, and I didn't realize that I was training my ear to be able to hear things and identify things. But never did formal lessons. Got to year 7 in high school, so first year of high school. In the very first week, they do a musical aptitude test. I was the first person in 5 or 6 years to get 100% on that test, just from listening and answering questions. So they invited us down to the band night, the music sign-up night. So the stage band performs and the concert band performs. And at the end, they try and offer you an instrument and get you signed up. And this person, I can't remember his name because he wasn't at the school for a long term, but he goes, "All right, Michael, we got the perfect instrument for you." And he holds up this black thing and goes, "Here we go, it's an oboe." And me and my dad just like looked at each other and started laughing. Like, you recommend that I play the oboe? Like, what is this? And not to disrespect any oboe players out there, but me and my dad just like started laughing because it was totally not what we expected. Right. And then my dad said to the teacher, he's like, "Oh, where's the real instruments like guitar and drums and stuff?" And this guy being the band leader just looked, offended. And he's like, "Oh yeah, well, we could sign you up for them, but tonight's not really about that." My dad turned and he looked to me and he goes, "Michael, would you like to learn guitar or drums?" And my dad's really big into music, and I probably should have mentioned that there wasn't a day where music wasn't playing. There's a Aussie singer called Jimmy Barnes, head of a famous band called Cold Chisel, and we had like one of his LP covers like blown up to as big as wall, and every time you walked in, like just this massive photo of Jimmy Barnes on the wall. My dad was always playing music. My parents were always going to concerts and things like that. Absolutely couldn't got a better environment to be brought up into in terms of a musician. But they never actually played instruments. My dad did a bit of drums, but he looked at me and goes, "Do you want to learn guitar or drums?" And my heart did that little flutter thing where everything in my head was going, yes, 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 yes. And I got shy and went, "Oh, I couldn't do that." He goes, "Oh, all right, no worries." So, we went home and that was that. And we had music class in year 7, and I could not stand it. I'm 6'1". In year 7, when I was 12, I was already 6'1", or right on 5'11", just about to cross over. So I was a pretty big kid, and we had those really horrible chairs where the desk and the chair is the same thing, and it was obviously made for people who were 12, and I already had a fully grown kind of body. And it was the last 2 hours on Friday, and we had to learn these 200-year-old, Beethoven songs, and not even the good ones. It was just whatever the music teacher thought was her favorite stuff we learned. And it was really boring. It was really engaging. It was always like at the end of the day in these cruddy little chairs, and it just wasn't fun. And fast forward again 2.5 years, my cousin got a guitar, and he had his birthday in February, but his guitar didn't arrive in time, or something like that. And it got delayed in the shipping. Some dodgy deal my uncle, put together to get it cheap that went bad. Anyway, about 6 months later, the guitar arrives. So we have an impromptu party to celebrate his birthday. And he showed me how to do a few things on the guitar. And literally from the moment I played the first ever dud note, it was like getting hit by a bolt of lightning. And I knew that I wanted to play guitar. And I spent the rest of the party playing his guitar on his birthday. And when I walked home, like literally, I walked across the road. We only lived a couple of houses down. And my dad came about 5 minutes later. And as soon as I walked in, I'm like, Dad, can you get me a guitar for my birthday? And my birthday was 3 weeks later. He goes, oh, I've been waiting for you to ask that question for the last 2 years. And he took me to, like the next day, like 9 a.m. we went to the music shop. I picked out a guitar off the wall, this beautiful black guitar. It was called a Legend. I got like the Guns N' Roses strap and like right into it. And I think there's just something magical about when you become a teenager, you start making your own musical choices. It starts reflecting your identity. And even as a teacher now, if I can get boys in particular, and everyone is the same, but boys, just something happens when they hit that 13, 14-year-old thing and something just changes inside them and their music starts to define who they are. And it still happens with girls. I think girls are just a little less external, like they don't wear their heart on their sleeve the same way that guys do, and that, you know, they don't adopt the personality of the musical subgenre. Some do, some don't, but just some observations. But to continue on with my journey there, I religiously practiced guitar at least 3, if not 6 hours a day, every day from there on. And I went into music class with renewed, passion. Of 2 years of not enjoying it at all. In year 9, we got to pick guitar. So all these things were happening at the same time. I was starting to listen to, rock music. I was discovering bands like Van Halen and Guns N' Roses and the whole world of guitar playing, which really appealed to me. Guitar Hero had just come out or would come out pretty soon around there and be like a really big cultural kind of thing with the teen and video game culture and things like that. It was just all happening and I was just loving every minute of it. And I was talking to my teachers about, okay, well, I want to do music. I want to be a guitar teacher. I want to do music. I want to play guitar. And in my mind, it didn't matter what I was doing as long as I was doing guitar. And I'd kind of always been leaning towards some sort of educational role, like a classroom teacher. As long as I can remember, I've been teaching people, whether that's about Pokemon or about birds and nature. I had all these clubs at my primary school. I was always trying to teach other people about the things I was passionate about and enthusiastic about. And then guitar was my next, massive obsession. And I have the gift of having that kind of obsessive personality where once I'm onto something, that's like everything and it gets all of my attention. So that was me, where I became the guitar kid in my high school. And then I went off to university. The advice was, if you want to be a musician, you're going to be poor and broke. So you need a proper day job to support yourself. And if you like music and you like teaching, you should probably become a classroom teacher. My guitar teacher told me this. My music teacher told me this. And from an entrepreneurial perspective, that is some of the worst advice you could ever get. Right. And fortunately, my parents, were business owners. I had a whole shelf of business books, and we'll get back to that part of the story later. But I thought, okay, so what I have to do is go to university, study music, and then do a teaching degree after that, which is pretty conventional wisdom. Right. And I went from being the best kid in high school, and I'd only been playing guitar for 2.5 years at this point. My first ever formal lesson was on my 15th birthday, 9:30 a.m., 3rd of August 2005. So fortunately, I can tell you exactly when I had my first lesson because it was on my birthday morning then. Right. But I've been playing for 2.5 years, and then I went to university and then had to go to a tertiary level of everything. So I went from the best high school guitar player to the worst guy at uni, and it was really, really tough. And it wasn't so much, oh man, I hate this, I'm suffering. It's more, I'm so passionate and enthusiastic about everything. I need to learn everything, but there just weren't enough hours in a day to catch up. And reflecting upon the previous style of learning was, you've got an exam coming up, you need to copy things like a parrot to repeat for the examiners, to you need to feel music and understand it and unlock what's inside you. It was a very different approach, and I just had not worked on any of those skills. Even though technically I could do things quite well, it was a very, tale of two different worlds crossing over there. But I went through university. I really appreciate my time there. I loved every minute of it. It was like, being a kid in a candy shop every single day. What am I going to learn today? And I just had that unquenchable thirst for knowledge. And I had a life-changing conversation. So what happens was, in Australia, if you do a music degree, you used to be able to do something called a diploma of education or a graduate, a grad or whatever. So you do an extra 1 year of teacher training, and then you can go and teach in schools. And literally the year before I finished, and I had an arm operation, which I won't go into, but essentially I had an arm operation where I couldn't play for 2.5 years, had to have surgery, had to rehab my hand and do all those kind of things. And during that 2.5 years overlap, so instead of my degree being 3 years, it was 5 years. And I missed out by 1 year on the qualification being changed. So
Oh man.
all of a sudden you had to get a master's degree, which was 2 years of study. Instead of being something you can do part-time, 12 hours a week, it was like a full-time study load, 30 hours a week
Right.
with mandatory placements. And during that time, I'd started building my own business. I had probably, 20 or so students, and I was just starting to really get into that entrepreneurial streak, which would be my next obsession. But I had a conversation with the head of guitar at my music school, and he told me about how a famous American jazz guitar player called Mike Stern came to Australia, and he got the opening gig. So he's in Melbourne's best concert hall, 4,000 people, and he opens the show. Mike Stern, after he gets off stage, just goes, "Wow, that was really something. Don't go anywhere. I want to speak to you after the show."
Wow.
Long story short, after the show, he invited him to do the Brisbane and the Sydney shows. So the next 2 nights, he goes, "That was amazing. The rest of the world, the rest of Australia needs to hear this and know who you are." And then at the end of the Brisbane show, 3 days later, he goes, "Man, I just got off the phone to the record label. You guys are coming to us with the United States. We're gonna put you on the 40-date tour. At the end of it, we're gonna record a record with you guys because, man, like, this is something." And for any musician, that's the dream. You get picked up by a record label, you do a big tour, and then you're famous, you make it. And the caliber of player that this person was, I've got no doubt that they'd be a household name within, jazz, or at least jazz guitar, because they're absolutely phenomenal.
Right.
Anyway, he got back to Melbourne. He told his wife. She was super excited for about 5 minutes, and then the fear set in. How am I going to survive for 2 months without you? Who's going to, you're going to lose your job. How are you going to pay for this? Who's going to look after the kids? You can't do it. So, he had to go the next day, chat to the rest of the bandmates and things and say, "Hey, I can't actually do this." And then call Mike and tell him that, "No, this isn't on." Right. So he had spent his whole life at this point working towards that dream moment, and he had to say no. Wow. And he was telling me this close to 20 years after the fact, and he was still bitter about it. And he knew that there hasn't been a day gone past where he goes, "I made the wrong choice here."
Right.
And it was in that moment, I'm like, I can't feed back into this system. I have to do something different, because if I get this day job, I'm not going to be able to tour. I'm not going to be able to go out and share my music with the world. And I'm only going to have like a fixed salary. And the other part of the decision was, I did the maths. I'm like, I'm making about $50,000 a year teaching 20 hours a week. Right. And what I have to do is invest about another $60,000 into this degree. It's going to take 2 years of my life, during which time I'm going to have to get rid of all these students I've built up. And I'm only going to be able to make $60,000 a year. Like, the equation's not working here. Yeah. And that's when I was like, I'm just going to double down and do what I'm already doing. So that's when I really started going, I need to find a way. And the other little turning point was my girlfriend at the time said to me, "When are you going to quit music and get a real job?"
Oh, wow.
And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, first I was like, how dare you? But then I was like, you know what? She's got a valid point. I don't think I'd ever made more than $20,000 a year Australian, which is probably like, maybe about $12,000 US at the time, probably less now. And I was like, you know what? She's right. You can't raise a family on this income. And fair enough, I was kind of still studying part-time, so I had the capacity to work more. But it was a very valid criticism from her at the time in terms of the financial side of things. I think a little bit of it was, in Australia, being a musician is still not a respectable job. You basically, if you're a sports fan or a sportsman or woman, you're a hero. But if you're a musician, you're literally the scum of the earth in Australia, and there's many negative sort of stigmas attached to it. Wow. Anyway, that was the fire that I needed to start researching, reading business books, getting myself organized, finding some coaching. And there was a really big shift in terms of, I found someone who was training guitar teachers to do a better job. And specifically take control of their life. And I went into that program for a couple of years. I got a really great business model. I had some really good coaching. Ended up, after a certain point, being really bad coaching and bad advice. But it was what I needed to transform from a 25-year-old kid still living at home, whose dream was just of being playing in a band, to, you know what? I'm 25 now. I was a grown man 7 years ago. And I just have absolutely no idea. So that was when my entrepreneurial well and truly started, where I started thinking like a business person rather than just a musician. And I took all that training and started using that with my band. And my band went from, just a local band doing nothing to getting big international support slots and then touring. So all the business stuff that I was learning, I was using for my band and I was using for my business. And yeah, basically got to the point where I didn't go to uni. I withdrew. I doubled down on my business. And within 12 months, I was making $100,000 a year teaching guitar, which is, people just don't believe you can make that amount of money teaching guitar. So I was doing this from the spare bedroom of my parents' house. And then I thought, you know what? How big can I make this? How crazy can I make this? So I just took the business model and I just doubled down, and I was teaching 142 students by myself.
Wow.
I was working about 60 hours a week to do it, but I had taken my business to about $280,000 in Australian money. So I was making well and truly over $200,000 US, almost about $230,000, $40,000, teaching from the spare bedroom in my parents' house before I got a commercial location and or any other teachers involved. So it definitely wasn't sustainable. It was literally, teaching from 8 a.m. sometimes to 9 p.m. every day of the week, 6 days a week. But I made a lot of money in a very short period of time. And I was like loaded. It was like the best, and going from 25, only ever making $20,000 a year, to 26 and making like 110,000 to 27 and 280 something thousand in a single year. All the revenue came out, the tax came out, and all the things like that. But that was like, I made it. This is awesome. So that's kind of my story. And then from that point onwards, it was just about going, okay, well, I can easily cram a whole bunch of people in a room and make money through group lessons and things like that. But if I'm working 142 hours a week, I don't have any time for touring. So I've just created an additional job for myself.
Right.
So that's where it becomes about, okay, now I've got to get other people involved. I've got to build a business around it. And I've now got, between our two locations, my partner is a singing piano teacher, and so she does half the business as well. We've probably got close to 350, 400 students. It goes up and down all the time. We've got two locations. We've got about 10 teachers working for us. And we are providing some of the best music lessons in Melbourne. We've got a great reputation. We've got awesome programs for kids and adults. And for me, it's just about trying to ignite that same passion I felt when I was 14, 15 about music with our other students and with our teachers, to give them an opportunity to earn a good income. When I was teaching guitar part-time at a local shop, they were giving me $12 of a $24 lesson. So, I was getting the same deal they were, but it wasn't all that much. And now, our 16-year-old junior assistants get more than $12. Like some of our best guys are on $40, $50 an hour, which is, more than what they'd be able to get negotiating for themselves. So for me, it's just about how do we create a scenario where everyone wins within our music school and share our passion for music and show everyday people that, there are going to be professional guitar players, but everyone has the potential to become a good guitar player. And you can still do it on part-time hours. And most importantly, it's just a fun hobby thing to do. And I think if you look at a lot of Polynesian cultures and a lot of Latin American cultures, they're much more musical than we are here in the West. Like in Australia, unless someone has had 6 beers, they're very unlikely to just burst into song and start singing, even at a party or a social event. They're very reserved within the Australian culture. We're not a very musical kind of people, but music is still part of our life. We love music. We love listening to it. And what we want to do is show everyday people that they can do that.
Yeah. How about your own music? Where are you with that? And how much of has this entrepreneurial sense of yours taken away from creating music?
That's a great question. So, with my own music, it's probably from, age of 15 to 18, I was just learning other people's music. And then 17 and a half to 18, that's when I started writing my own songs and exploring with things. And then from 18 to, I think 18 to 20, I had like one band, which I was pushing really hard and writing songs and doing, okay-ish. And then after I had the arm surgery, I was literally at my best friend's 21st, and there was a band which I really liked, another band in our area. And the singer from that band was at this party, and he's like, "Oh, we're looking for a guitar player." And I was like, "Oh, well, and I had my hand in like a mold. I'm like, well, I had surgery 2 weeks ago, but if you're still looking for someone in 3 months when I can play guitar again, I'll audition for your band.
Right.
And then, sure enough, 3 months later, I did this audition, and I was like, hey guys, my surgeon says I can only play for 15 minutes a day at this point. What happens is every week I increase it by 5 minutes or whatever. And
Yeah.
part of my rehab and part of what got me back on track was, yes, I'm going to get to audition for this band soon. And what I would do is I would listen to the music and try and figure out what was going on. And I could do that without a guitar. I just had to listen and figure, and I just had a piano there, and I'd press one note at a time and figure it out. And I transcribed all their music and then just spent 15 minutes 3 times a day just trying to do it on the guitar and play it. Anyway, I auditioned. Long story short, I got the gig, even though I said, hey guys, I can play 3 songs and I'm done for today.
Yeah.
And they knew I was the right guy. And so I would be in that band for the next 7 or 8 years, creating my routine was guitar at that point. I'd play guitar for 2.5, 3 hours a day. I'd be writing songs, sometimes for the genre of music within that band, sometimes just stuff that I liked. But there was something just amazingly therapeutic about just sitting down, trying to play something and see what comes out of it. And whether that's acoustic guitar and this was a very heavy metal band, like to the point of, really extreme yelling and what most casual heavy metal listeners would go, that sounds like really bad, or I'm not into that kind of stuff. It's too extreme for me. So, and I wasn't actually into that genre. It's just that I really wanted to be in a band again. And I sort of got back into it. But yeah, so there's peak points where during the entrepreneurial path, I was like, everything I'm learning about business, I'm applying to the band, and it's doing really well. So that was working out really, really cool. And the gigs were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think something that I mentioned to you when we had our very first initial consultation is that humans are all about rituals. Since the dawn of time, humans have had rituals and rites of passage in their cultures, and there's always been music, whether that's banging two wooden sticks together or beating on a drum or blowing through an animal horn, right up to the sophisticated things that we have, all through the church, every ceremony, every mass, every religious thing, every wedding, every baptism, music. Doesn't matter what culture, where you are in the world, music has been a part of life since the dawn of time. And although the world, I believe, is a lot less religious and there aren't as many ceremonies as there would traditionally be, and in some parts of the world, religion is a big part of everyday life, and there's many parts of the world where we're much more secular. There's been that division of music and state and all those kind of things. But important ceremonies like weddings, there's always music. Going out to a venue or a restaurant, there's always music. If we're in an elevator, there is music to make the time pass even more. So music is just so ingrained in our culture and what we do. And to be part of that through the band, even though it was a heavy metal band, going out on a Friday night, being the entertainment and being more than entertainment for some people. The amazing thing is despite the heavy metal crowd being big, burly, tough, bearded, tattooed kind of Hell's Angels, biker looking type people, they were some of the nicest, gentlest kind of people I'd ever met. And it was because they got their aggression and their energy out through their music. They listened to very aggressive music, but that was their release. And I was a bit of a social butterfly. I was in with the football crowd. I was in with the music crowd. I was in with the goth heavy metal crowd. And I don't know if you do like the Myers-Briggs personality test, the 16 personality things. I'm an ENTJ commander, but I am ambiverted. So I'm like 51% extroverted and 49% introverted. So like I can be on my own in the woods. I can be the life of the party. I just have that ability to switch from one to the other.
You're a chameleon.
Yeah, the social chameleon kind of thing. So
well,
I was with all these groups. Oh, sorry. Yep, you go ahead.
You're a perfect segue to our topic, the power of music. And, I read a quote from Graham Psychology, which states, music has the ability to bring us joy and comfort, to motivate us and help us relax. It has the power to transport us back in time, to calm our worried minds or boost our moods. There really is a song for every emotion. And I think you nailed it, right? Like everybody's musical desires or their attractiveness to certain songs, it's basically a reflection of how they're feeling, and it brings their emotions out. In the situations of a wedding, music helps us boost our mood, helps us celebrate. At church, it provides different sounds where it helps us kind of get more engaged in what's going on. And I think it's very powerful though. And I don't know one person that doesn't like music, any kind of
Oh,
music.
you took my next quote. I was waiting to ask you that question at some point. Yeah.
Everybody loves music. Like that's one thing that I've never heard anybody say I don't like music. Like I don't, there's certain foods that people like, there's certain things that people don't like doing, but everybody likes music. Everybody, I mean, not everybody likes dancing, but everybody likes to listen to music, and it matches their
I've heard
emotions.
people say I don't like country music. That one comes up a lot.
Well, I mean,
But
you might not like different types of music, but there is a type of music for everybody. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
everybody has
that's it.
some kind of music that they gravitate towards. And
Yeah.
it's, you know, in the, you know, and I use this example a lot in my previous podcast. I talk about the situation with my mother. I lost my mother a few years ago, and I was in a tough place. I was in a dark place, and I gravitated to heavy metal. I started listening to heavy metal for the first time in my life, and it allowed me to release my anger and really connect with the lyrics and the music because of my feelings. Now, you know, and our taste in music evolves over time, as you know, as you age in different situations in your life. But you know, and lyrics have a lot to do with a lot of things when you're listening to music. Like when you can relate to the lyrics of a song, like you tend to be attracted more to it. So I think it's very fascinating, and I'd love to hear more about what you, if you know, get into the more of the psychology of music and how you feel. Why do you feel it does that for us? Like, how does it work?
Yeah. That's a great question. Like, uh, I was literally chatting to someone else on a podcast last night about there's this Australian teacher, music teacher turned neuroscientist, or it might be the other way around. Her name's Dr. Anita. I cannot for life of me remember her surname.
Mm-hmm.
But she's starting to do studies into the brain and what happens when people listen to music, and just looking at all the different scans that happen and see how stimulated our mind is when music is present when we're listening to it. And then when you start actually learning music, it's a next level on top of that. So if you want smarter kids, if you want more intelligent kids with better memory, better cognitive capacity, fine motor skill development, you've got to get your kids learning an instrument because it just does wonders for their brain. But another point to sort of touch on there in terms of what's happening with our minds, if you want to know how powerful music is, just go to YouTube and type in whatever your favorite music scene is. What is one of the most powerful scenes in a music that you've ever listened to without music? And you can take one of the most emotional kind of scenes or powerful, impactful scenes that there is,
Mm-hmm.
and then you take the music out of it and you feel nothing. There's no connection. It's just like,
Yeah.
images.
Yeah.
So the music has this ability to convey feeling. And without going into a music theory lecture, there are deliberate things we can do within music to evoke certain emotions. Music is a mathematical formula. And my students hate this when I say, do you like maths? And they go, I hate maths. I'm like, well, you're going to hate music because music is all just maths. But if I want to portray happiness, I can use specific, music theory devices and play certain notes in certain sequences to evoke a feeling of happiness or sadness or excitement or whatever it happens to be. So there are a number of different options available to composers to kind of, evoke certain sounds. And if you've ever gone like, why do all the pop songs sound the same? It's because there's this one formula, which you've often seen. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google Axis of Awesome 4-chord song. And all of these songs are written with the same couple of chords, because what essentially happens is through hundreds of years of evolution in the musical world, our ears in the Western culture have acclimatized to those being the favorite pitches that sound good. So the songwriters not wanting to take risks will just double down on those. In India, they have these things called ragas. So we might think of it as a scale. Re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. We have a couple of scales in Western music. In India and their music system, they have these things called ragas, which are essentially the same thing, but they only play certain ones at certain times of the day. So there's like a morning raga, and they have their music for the morning, and they have their music for, the afternoon. And we had this guest performer come and do a lecture when I was back at university, and he goes, you wonder why all you Westerners are confused. It's because you play all the music all the time. In India, we have morning music to set our day up, and we have afternoon music to get us reoriented, and night music to get us ready for bed and things like that. It was so simple and but so true. We've got everything every time of the day. We're listening to aggressive music, if we are into heavy metal, you're listening to aggressive music 24/7. You're listening to whatever is your favorite genre of music, as opposed to a bit more of a general reflection. And I think as I've gotten older, as you said, you kind of mellow out. I remember one of my guitar teachers saying, Michael, about 25, 26, you stop listening to heavy metal and you'll probably start liking jazz. And he was like to the day. Like at one point in time, I could not stand jazz because I didn't get it. And then one day I heard this sound, I was like, what was that? And it was just really cool to me. And then, I do much more jazz and improvisation and things like that, and still love metal. But right now, if you looked at my playlist, it's kind of like, movie film scores, which is kind of funny that you said that. Movie film scores, some guitar-based jazz, the occasional heavy metal, and a lot of these, I have to say, because I'm always listening to songs and transcribing them, there's way too much Taylor Swift and Lady Gaga and Harry Styles and all this music I wouldn't otherwise listen to, but sneaks into my playlist. But to bring this one in for closing, one thing I think is really interesting with the TikTok and Instagram and all these social media platforms where you take a clip and add a soundbite to it is all the people adding the same kind of dramatic sounds to everything over and over. And, it's like, take the third video from your phone and add this music to it and it'll be some really nice piano somber melody that builds up in motivation, and it just makes it feel epic. So music has that wonderful ability to do that, and the technology has now put that in the hands of the everyday people.
Yeah, I think it's super powerful. Music obviously like creates so much emotion and can stir up, magnify feelings, and it's super powerful. But I have a question for you. Like I've never been very artistic. I've never been able to play an instrument. Why is that so? Why is it that some people just don't pick up things as easily as others?
Yeah, it's a really great question. Everyone has various intelligences. Some people are more mathematical.
Yeah.
Some people are more creative and artistic. Like for me, I could do anything technically, but I really struggled with creativity and improvising and coming up with my own things. And that's not just in music, that's like in most arts. And there's going to be that big spectrum of creativity or things like that. With guitar, someone explained to me that, this diagram represents a guitar and this is how you read the music. Right. There hasn't been a single music theory topic where it was explained to me once, I instantly understood it, and I had it. I've never had a problem with that. But teaching people, this diagram is, this box on the guitar, and I will have to explain it, 3 or 4 times over 2.5 weeks because they just don't get it, or they never get it, or they forget things and play upside down. So I get exposed to, a lot of different things as well. I'm a firm believer that if you put enough time into anything, you'll become good at it. And what we don't realize is, you might start guitar when you're 15, but you might have gone to a school where you did music classes and you just learned to sing or hit some percussion instruments, and that was developing your skills. You might actively listen to music every day at home or have parents that are always playing music and pick up on those skills. You might just sing a lot, walk around a lot singing, or you might be involved in a church group where you do choir 2 or 3 times a week and develop your voice that way. So often when we see people who are naturally talented, what we don't realize is all the hard work that they've already done, or all the work they've done passively without realizing it. Now, I've definitely come across people who just have a natural proclivity towards music. My stepdaughter, for example, is just musically amazing. She's got perfect pitch. She can tell every single note. The first time that, not the first time that I met her, but the first time that I played guitar in front of her, picked up a guitar and played, and she just walked up to me and goes, "That's out of tune," and just and tuned it like that. And I was like, who is this person? And how does she know that? And so there are definitely people who music is their thing. They just have a natural gift. But there's also people who are the opposite of that. No matter how hard they try, they're just very klutzy in things. They don't understand it. They don't get it, things like that. But there's a big spectrum of people in the middle. Like people always say, "Oh, I'm tone deaf." Now, being tone deaf is a real thing. But if you were tone deaf, you wouldn't be able to. The only people who don't like music are people who are tone deaf, because it's just one big wall of sound to them. They can't tell the difference between pitch and voice. You wouldn't be able to hear me doing this or doing this. You wouldn't hear any difference in that if you were tone deaf. Right. That affects 0.02% of the human population, 1 in every 2,000 people are actually like that. Something, ridiculous
Very
number.
rare. Is there
But
is
for
it
everyone else, sorry,
um
just my closing point. For everyone
go ahead.
else, it's just a matter of, if you learn an instrument or anything, as long as you stick with it long enough, you will eventually
Yeah.
get to where you're going. And unfortunately, what you do, and we'll probably come back to this in a later question, what people do is they listen to something on the radio, they rush out and they get a guitar, they try it for 3 hours or 3 weeks, maybe even 3 months, and they go, this isn't for me, and I give up. What you're doing is listening to somebody who's spent 10 years learning, taking lessons, working, writing songs, and then they put a bit of studio magic on it to make it sound even better.
Right.
You're hearing where they are 10 years, 10,000 hours into their journey, and you're comparing it to where you are 3 hours, 20 hours into your journey and going, oh, I'm just not cut out for this. When that would be like, going to 3 basketball trainings and going, well, I'm just not as good as LeBron James, so I'm going to quit right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess everybody is capable, is what you're saying. And some just take longer to get it, and some people get it faster. But is there an optimal age that you recommend people, our kids, start learning instruments?
Yeah, great question. So I think the optimal age is when they ask about learning an instrument. So you want to get them,
Get them
kids are
interested.
very transient in their interests,
Yeah.
but they can also be deeply obsessed with things when they find something they like. So when a kid starts asking about lessons, that's the time to go and find them lessons. But unfortunately, a lot of teachers make the mistake of trying to teach everyone the same way. Oh, this 3-year-old wants to learn.
Yeah.
Or this 10-year-old wants to learn, or an adult wants to learn. Here's how you learn the guitar this way. When
Yeah.
that mucks people up, you need to go, well, what does success look like for someone who is 3? And what are we going to focus on? And this goes back to what we were saying about, well, why do some people struggle? It's depending on what level that you're doing. So I can quite comfortably have a 3-year-old just clapping along to things and developing a rhythm. We can have someone who is 5 years old singing some melodies and copying some hand cymbals or doing some more complex rhythms. The problem with, you might start when you're 15 or you're 12 or you're 20 and you go straight to trying to do the hard stuff. So if I was your instructor at the gym, your personal trainer, I wouldn't say, all right, Omid, today we're going to do bench press in your first session. I can lift 100 kilos, so let's start with 100 kilos. We're setting you up to get squashed. It's just not going to work.
Right.
Whereas if I said, hey, Omid, 100 kilos or 25 pounds, something equivalent, this is a very big milestone that I've taken years to work my way up to.
Right.
We're going to get you there one day, but we can't start there because you won't be able to do it. And if on the odd chance you can just throw your whole body behind it and your weight offsets it, it's going to come crashing down and then we're going to have trouble. And the fact that the harder you try, the more fatigued you'll get and the less likely you'll be able to get it. So you can't force this thing. Instead, what we're going to do is give you a broomstick, and we are going to just get you used to doing that bench press motion with a broomstick. That way you'll be able to feel what the correct movement is and see yourself, or I can record you or show you in a mirror. You know what to do. There's no chance of injuring yourself, and there's 100% chance of success.
Yeah.
Once you can do that properly, then I might get a slightly heavier bar. Once you can do that properly, we'll get a slightly heavier bar. And once we get to the standard 20 kilo Olympic bar, then we'll start putting weights on it. And over the next couple of weeks, months, even years, we're going to work towards your goal. So that's what a successful personal trainer does in the gym.
Right.
If guitar players go, well, what's the simplest thing that we can do? Or music students go, what's the simplest thing we can do? Let's just clap some rhythms to get some timing. Okay, we can do that. Fantastic. Now let's just hit one string in time and get that working. Fantastic. Now let's just get one finger and let's just change between 2 notes. So just like putting Lego together, if you start with 1 block and then 2 block and then put them together, then get block 3, 4, put them together, put all 4 blocks together and lay the right foundation, anyone can learn an instrument. The problem is that everyone goes in the deep end and then hopes that they can sink or swim. And most people sink because of unfair comparisons and things like that. So best friend's wedding, and he obviously married a New Zealand girl with a Maori background. And so they had the Polynesian band, traditional band, performing at the wedding. And there was kids up there, like 5 or 6 playing ukulele. And it's like, well, how do they get them to do that? What I figured out was the song might have had 4 chords. They just had 4 different people doing one at a time. So this person had one job, and all they had to do was, if they could count to 4 and go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then wait their turn for the next couple of people to come back to them, then they could play the music. And it was like, wow, that's so simple. We're trying to get everyone to do the whole thing. But if we have 4 different people working as a team, we can get them to come together and make some sounds. And that's a big part of what we do with the kids is, yeah, it's unrealistic to have someone who has no motor skills at this point in time to try and go from there to there
Yeah.
instantly. It
Right.
doesn't work. But if all they have to do is that, and the other person, all they have to do is that, then 1, 2, 3, 4, change to 3, 4. All of a sudden we can play a game out of them and teach them in a fun, engaging way. And to bring this in for landing, the one thing that I haven't mentioned that we may get to, and I hopefully would, is that music just brings people together, whether that's in the ceremony, playing like that, or whether it's giving people who would otherwise not be sporty or athletic an opportunity to come together in a band and be a team, or an orchestra and a team, and be part of that production. Music is an opportunity for some people to get that interhuman connection and build relationships who aren't necessarily going to do it, through a sport or through, other interests which may not, suit them.
Yeah. And I think you just nailed it. I think that's the bottom line here is the power of music brings people together, and together music is better. And I think that's pretty magical. But going back to what we were just talking about, we talked about what age they should start. Is there a time where it's too late, like where you're too old to learn an instrument?
Not at all. You're never too old to learn. And there's always some advantages to, pardon me, there's always advantages to starting young in terms of just like compound interest. The longer you've got the money in the account generating interest, the more powerful it becomes over time. So that's the benefit of starting early. But unfortunately, a lot of people who start early are put off by bad teachers, or just kind of phase out of it for a little bit, or a number of different reasons come up. Like, I've never had a person say, I regret taking music lessons, but every single week I get 2 or 3 people say, call me up and I want to learn guitar again. I did it when I was a kid and then I gave up and I really regret it, or I quit because of this reason. So every day people tell me how much they regret it, but I'm able to say, hey, look, no worries. At whatever point in time, it was the wrong time for you, but there's the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. And if anything, as an adult, you're coming into it because you've now got the time, you want to do it. You've got a couple of decades of passive listening. So your love and appreciation has kind of bubbled up to the point where now you can't handle it anymore and you want to do it. And you've got the money and the time to invest into it. You're doing this because you want to do it, not because mum and dad thought it was a good thing. They listened to someone like me give a lecture about the importance of getting their kids into music and were forced into it. So that's one of the advantages. And even, for the senior years, it's like, okay, you've just retired. Now you've got plenty of time to put into this properly. And again, you've got even more listening experience. You've got plenty more spare time. You've potentially got the disposable income. There's no time like the present. You may as well get into it. It's going to give you something to do. It's going to help you make new friends. It's going to help you help your brain. And we've got more and more older people as the research comes out saying how to delay Alzheimer's. You need to keep on learning. So learning an instrument is a lifelong pursuit. You're never finished. I feel like I'm just scratching the surface with my guitar playing, despite probably, being in the top 1% of players all around the world. Like, I can do absolutely amazing things, and I totally feel like I'm a beginner. And if I go to someone who's even further beyond me for the, a lesson, they're exactly the same. They're like, oh, I'm so not good at guitar. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to get to that next level. So it's that perpetual, chasing the dragon of self-development, self-improvement. And music does that. It allows you to become a better person, both in the technical sense and your knowledge and your ability to share with others. But I get to give back to my community. I get to make people's dreams come true at their weddings by playing music. I get to have proud parents in the audience while their kids are on stage in front of the entire school playing, the national anthem or whatever it happens to be, just ripping through a rock song. I get to put someone on a path where they learn how to play an instrument, and then through the next 10 years of college and university and that, get to play in bands. So many memories that people will love and cherish for the rest of their lives come from learning an instrument. And whether that's you, you might only do it for a young kid, or you might be getting into it, as a 70-year-old. It doesn't really matter. It's never too late to learn.
Right.
But the longer you leave it, the less benefit of that compounding interest that you get. And I will always say to people, like, the first 2.5, 3 years are the hardest. They're the most frustrating because you can't do things as freely. You're in that, you're in the learning phase. It's like driving. The first, 2.5 years of driving. Uh, this is a bit more, Australia. In Australia, you don't get to get your learners until you're 16. I understand in most of the United States, you can actually drive freely by then. So
Yes.
uh, in Australia, you don't get to drive under supervision until you're 16. And once you turn 18, you can go for your test.
Mm.
Once you get the license, that's when the real driving begins. That's when, everything changes. So
Right.
you thought of music lessons as I'm going to learn for 2.5, 3 years. Once you can get the basic skills fluent, and
Hmm.
it does take 2 or 3 years for most people, not everyone, but most people. That's when your whole world opens up, and now you can be totally free and get home from a stressful day, just pick up the guitar and play and relax. Or you might call a couple of friends who can also play instruments and get together and have a bit of a jam session. Or you might have Valentine's Day coming up, and the amazing thing about technology now is what would have been $100,000 studio in the 80s, you can get for $500 and of software and a little external
Yeah.
device, and plug straight into your laptop or your phone and record. So you might go, oh, okay, well, someone's birthday's coming up, or it's our anniversary or Valentine's Day. I'm going to write and record a song and have that impact on someone. So yeah, in terms of ages, the youngest I would take people is probably 3. If they can count,
Wow.
then they can learn music. And
Wow.
and even if it's just dancing around and listening to music and exposing them, you need to expose people to music, even if it's not formal lessons, from a
Right.
young age.
I love that.
And you can go all the way up through. I think there's something magical about learning music as a teenager for the therapeutic benefits and just that whole self-identity thing. I think it's
Yeah.
really, really important. Plus the teamwork element. I think it just can bring so many people together, having them play music. And
Yeah.
that's probably something that our academic approach to music fails in the West. Is it's learn this as a solo, and then kind of playing with other people is a bit of a side thing or an extracurricular activity. When if we simplified it down and just go, what's the easiest way we can get people playing with each other,
Yeah.
then far more people would have much more fun learning music, because they'd be playing with their friends and interacting and doing it as a social thing, as opposed to only the elite people who get to a certain level get to go on and play with other people. I
Yeah.
think that's where the Western system has it a little bit backwards.
So as far as somebody that knows they want to play an instrument but doesn't know which instrument they want to play, what advice do you have for people to pick an instrument?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I think the easiest thing you can do is just listen to or make a list of your 10 favorite bands or artists or songs, and then ask yourself, well, what instruments are being played here? So if you listen to electronic music,
Mhm.
then go and learn keyboard and how to program music and the music theory. If you listen to rap music, like same thing, you're going to have these digital sounds and stuff like that. If you listen to primarily rock music, well, okay, there's voice, there's piano, drums, bass,
Mhm.
guitar, a couple of other instruments there. So then you go, okay, well, I'm going to try this one, I'm going to try that one. And most teachers are going to offer a free lesson. If you go to music school and say, hey, I really want to learn an instrument, but I'm not sure which one gravitates
Mhm.
to me yet, then just book a free lesson or pay for a couple of one-off lessons and pick the one you like the most. So I
Yeah.
think, universally guitar and piano are pretty safe for most people.
Right.
And if you can play guitar, it easily transfers to ukulele or banjo. Not that
Yeah.
banjo's that popular, but ukulele is definitely uh, gaining more and more popularity.
Mhm.
And piano is one of those universal instruments where if you can play a piano, any second instrument you learn is always easier than the first one, because you have worked on the skills
Right.
in terms of you understand the theory, you get better timing and rhythm, and you kind of just can figure things out. Your brain, it's not their first rodeo, so to speak. So I always tell my students, if you don't know whether to do electric guitar or acoustic guitar, write a list of your favorite artists and then just count up how many do electric versus acoustic, and then you'll have your answer of which one to do. So if we extrapolate that back a step, you just listen to your favorite artists, figure out what instruments are being played, and then go and pick one. And if you try it for 3 months and you don't like it, then try another one. And don't underestimate voice. I think so many people don't count voice as an instrument. I think it's one of the easiest ones to get into lessons with, because you don't have to learn any technical skills per se. You're not facilitating
Yeah.
different movements. You still have to learn a whole bunch of different things in your voice and stuff like that. It's still a challenging instrument to learn and do well.
Right.
But what is more fun than singing along to your favorite songs?
Yeah.
and having that feeling of music surge up inside you. So if anyone's ever unsure, just doing some voice lessons. And again, some people sound terrible. I've taken countless voice lessons, and I'm only ever going to be a backing vocalist at best. I'm not lead
Yeah.
vocal material, but that doesn't mean it's any less fun for me to sing along to my favorite songs or to go in a choir and be part of something. So don't discredit voice as a valid instrument as well. And it's often one of the easiest and less, it's already the most affordable
Yeah.
instrument. You already have one.
Yeah. But is everybody capable of singing?
Everyone is capable of singing 100%. Now, everyone has different physiology. Yeah, everyone's got slightly different vocal cords,
Right.
different resonances in their mouths. Some people can only get to a certain point. Not everyone's going to sound like Pavarotti or Justin Bieber or whoever your favorite rock singer is. So
Right.
you are you, and this is something that often frustrates singers, and general part of musical identity as well is so many people are sometimes upset at the fact they don't sound like their favorite singer, but their favorite singer is their favorite singer. It would like being a 5 foot tall basketball player. You grow to 5 foot, you can't compete in
Right.
the NBA. You are excluded from certain things. So yes, unfortunately for a lot of people, genetically you will never be a mezzo soprano in the symphony opera or whatever, something like
So
that.
so if I sang for you right now, you would cringe and run away. You're saying I can get to the point where you would actually enjoy me singing. I can get to that point.
Everyone with a proper coach, yeah,
With the
everyone
proper
can
coach.
get to the point with training.
Okay.
Everyone can improve. And like if you smoke a lot of cigarettes and you drink whiskey every day, that's going to have an effect on your voice. So just
Got
like if you go to the gym, if you work out regularly, if you eat well, if you sleep well, then that's going to solve 95% of your fitness problems and get you looking
Right.
decent. Now, unless you go to the gym for 3 hours and take a few extra substances, you're not going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but you can become the best version of you. So the
Got it.
same thing with your voice. Like you may not necessarily sound like, the one in a million people that join Aerosmith or Van Halen or whatever, because they are the genetic limitations who also worked really hard.
Yeah.
The genetic exceptions that worked really hard, but you can get a lot better. So you get to the point where you can sing something and people go, oh, wow, that sounds nice and melodic. Or you
Right.
could get a part in an amateur theater, doing well. Are you going to be a rock star, or are people going to pay you millions of dollars to come and record?
Not gonna
Probably not. That's the
happen.
unicorn example, but you can get
Yeah.
a lot happier to where you will find, enjoyment in your day-to-day living, and
Yeah.
you're not going to have your wife or your kids like telling you to shut up, or hey, it sounds like cat's dying, or whatever it is. So it's just about having realistic expectations, and importantly, the teacher doing that as well. But yeah, anyone can learn how to sing and anyone can improve.
Right.
Some people can only improve up to a certain point, or again, if you have a low voice, you can only sing within a certain range. If you have a high voice, you can only sing within a certain range. But that's just like, again, if you're on the football team or the basketball team, you have different positions that you can play, depending on your height and your body build and things like that. So yeah, just like if you put enough time into your fitness, you'll
Yeah.
look much better. If you put enough time into singing or any music lesson, then you will develop skills and you will sound better.
Right. Well, I've learned a lot from our conversation here in the last 50 minutes, and the LifePro podcast is in place as a manual to life. The concept is that everything in life comes with a manual except for life itself. And my next question to you is something I ask all my guests: is what is one thing that you want to teach the world?
Yeah, one thing that I want to teach the world, and this is applicable to music instruments, but it's applicable to anything that you want to do. If you want to do it, you've just got to stick with it long enough to succeed at it. So I'm a firm believer that if everyone took 5 years of music lessons or singing lessons, then they would be a very good player. Like they're still not going to be absolutely world class, but even if they only did like a 30-minute practice session 2 or 3 times a week, or even if they didn't practice at all, if they did 5 years worth of lessons, that would give them enough time to accumulate the skills to improve what they're doing, to understand the key topics, and to be able to play confidently. If you wanted to go to the gym and get in shape, if you went to the gym for 5 years straight, I guarantee you that you would look amazing. Now, given you're not drinking like tons of alcohol and eating tons of junk food, even if you were, you'd have a lot of body fat, but you still have lots of muscle under that, and you'd still have quite a high base level of fitness. So it's one of them things where whatever you want to do, don't give up and go, okay, I tried it, it was too hard. What's the next thing? Because you'll be
Yeah.
constantly chasing activities to fill this void, this emptiness of your life. You know,
Yeah.
anything that's worth doing, it's worth doing properly. It's worth investing tons of time in. And people go, oh, I just wasn't talented enough at guitar. No, talent is the reward for the hard work that you put in. Every single person that you want to be like has put in the time, they have put in the effort. Some people will get there in 1 year, some people will get there in 10 years. But if everyone gave it 5 years, whether that was becoming a creative writer, whether that was becoming an actor, a singer, a musician, a bodybuilder, chasing your dream career, if you go after it with enough intensity for long enough, you'll eventually get there. So don't quit on your dreams, be consistent, put in the effort, and it's only a matter of time.
I love that. And I think that portrays that that's relevant to anything in the world. Like you mentioned, anything you set your mind to, you can achieve it. And I think playing music is no different. Anybody is capable as long as they set their mind to it and don't give up. Was there a book that, I know you're an author, is there a book that you read that inspired you?
I read a book, if I could only recommend one book, and this is to everyone in general. Like I could go specifics, and if you've got, I could easily email you a list of recommendations if anyone wants a full thing. But I think there's a book by one of my favorite authors and motivational coaches, gurus, called Grant Cardone, and the book's called The 10X Rule, or the 10 Times Rule.
Yeah.
I read that. I didn't sleep for about 3 days because I was just so on fire.
Yeah.
And that related so much to more the entrepreneurial path, but it's generally applicable to anything. If you want to be a professional guitar player, then you need to 10x what you're doing. You need to practice more. You need to do all the things that guitar players do. And you just need to, if you increase your output, there's no chance that you can fail. And it doesn't matter whether it's in business, in becoming a singer, in becoming a successful coach, or whatever it is. If you just take more action, then you will get more results.
Great. I love that. I firmly believe in that. If we shoot for the moon and we hit the stars, then we've done more than enough. So I love that. So you mentioned emailing you. How do people follow you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so if you want anything to do with business coaching or guitar playing, I've got 3 websites. So if you're interested in any sort of business building stuff, go to sixfigureguitarteacher.com, and that's basically where I help guitar teachers make proper living incomes teaching part-time hours. So I can train you to make $100,000 income teaching 15 to 20 hours a week with my special leveraged, business model. So for me, it, as I said with that teacher, what he ended up doing was getting a day job, which prevented him from going and chasing his dreams of being a musician. So for me, if we can get you teaching 10 to 20, 15 hours, but you're making a full-time income or $100,000, that's considered a good income, then you've got plenty of money to support your family. You've got plenty of time to go out and do your gigs. And if you need to fund a record or go on a tour, you've got the money to do it. Whereas so many musicians, they just aren't organized financially. They spend 10,000 hours mastering their instrument, but they never read a self-help book or a finance book, and they have a very negative mindset towards money. So I can help you set up your business from that perspective. I've got my Guitar Ninjas curriculum. So if you teach guitar, you're not all about the money, but you do want to save a lot of time on lesson prep, you can just get my curriculum, which is done for you, www.guitarninjas.com.au. The .au at the end is very important. And on social media, generally at Michael Gumley, Gumley. You'll find me on Instagram and Facebook mostly. I'm kind of one of those guys who I will switch off social media entirely for a month and just knuckle down on whatever project I've got to do. So if you message me and I don't reply, I'm probably just in like a deep work period where I've just, again, running 3 or 4 different companies. I'm flat out. I'm definitely 10x it. I generally, work those 14-hour days and don't sleep much. But if you message me on social media, I will get back to you at some point.
Great. I love it, Michael. Thank you so much for your time. I had a lot of fun talking to you today. I learned a lot, and I love music, and I think it's super, super powerful. And every time I hear music, I'll think of it a little bit differently than I did before this conversation. So thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Fantastic, Omid. It was absolute pleasure being on the show. I appreciate you giving me the platform, and I look forward to connecting with your listeners and hopefully contributing more in the future. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Great, Michael. And I want to remind everybody to like, follow, and share and help us spread the word. Take care.